All right, so let's do chapter 2, modules 3 and 4. It's biological psych, okay? So, brains, okay? Brain chemistry, okay, neuroscience, neurotransmitters, and so forth. I love this chapter too, by the way. All right. Okay. That's interesting. Let's use this one, actually. Alzheimer's disease, for instance, okay? This is related to neurotransmitters, okay? 10% of cases start after age 50, okay? And then 90% of cases start after age 65. So as you can see, dementia basically is related to Alzheimer, right? Dementia is the light form of basically forgetting, right? And Alzheimer's is much more serious. But symptoms, problem with memory, forgetting and repeating things, getting lost, being mildly confused. Okay? Those are the symptoms, all right? But as you can see, till age 50, the chances are very low, but after 65, chances are higher. Why is that? Age, right? It's more physical side. Of course, psychological too, but the brain functioning is slowing down, all right? But that's the way I'm going to be explaining about certain issues in biological psych, all right? So genes, we have genes, right? Does everyone has genes? Yes, of course we do, okay? So genes means chains of chemicals arranged like rungs of a twisting ladder, okay? You have about 20,000 to 25,000 genes that contain chemical interactions equaling roughly 300,000 pages of written instructions. Can you imagine that? So many pages. You wouldn't maybe reading that pages in your life in the books, right? But as you can see, that's very complex. And then genes program that development of individual parts into a complex body and brain. So that's the genes, okay? All right. Then this is the development of the brain, okay? So when the baby is forming the body and brain, the head, okay? That's how it starts. Then it's more fully developed brain, okay? It's just the difference. So human brain shaped like a small wrinkled melon, all right? That's how it looks, right? And then 1,350 grams, less than 3 pounds, okay? The pinkish white color, consistency of firm jello. That's like that, okay? And fueled by sugar, okay, glucose, 1 trillion cells divided into cells and neurons, okay? That's interesting. That's how it works. It's more like a biological fact. So glial cells guide the growth of developing neurons and wrap around neurons and form an insulation to prevent interference from other electrical signals, okay? And I'll explain more, but neurochemicals, all right? Neurotransmitters is like a lock and key. It has to be matched, okay? Otherwise, they're going to be floating around and to find the matching site. That's how it works in our brain, okay? So release chemicals that influence the neurons' growth and function. The lock and keys, if they're matched, then the certain chemicals can be produced. So like serotonin, okay, dopamine, okay, those neurotransmitters, all right? Neuron. So brain cell with 2 specialized extensions. One extension is for receiving electrical signals. The other one is for transmitting electrical signals. So I'm going to talk about axon and then synapse, myelin sheath, and stuff, okay? So can the brain grow new neurons? Yes, okay. Canary brain can grow about 20,000 neurons a day during the spring, learns new breathing song. And then primate and the human brain, okay, researchers conclude that adult monkey and human brains are capable of growing relatively limited numbers of neurons throughout adulthood, okay? So some new neurons play important role in contributing to learn and remember new things, like in the hippocampus in your brain, the brain parts, okay? So that's why you can still learn new language in adulthood. It's not easier. Like if you are like younger than 10 years old, the new language is like easy for them to learn. But after 10 years of age, it's not going to be easy for us because the brain is not like a sponge anymore. The first like 10 years, the development is so quick, right? But usually our brain is finished growing about the time of young adulthood. All right? Okay. All right. So repairing the brain too. Advances in STEM research suggest that human brain may be able to grow more neurons. Then we can repair damage due to accident, disease, and Alzheimer's too. It's still an ongoing process. We don't know much yet, but there are some hopes right there, okay? And then mind and body question, how complex mental activities such as feeling, thinking, learning can be explained by the physical, chemical, electrical activities of the brain. Okay, that's the most important part of your class too. All right, parts of the neuron I have to explain a little bit. Okay, cell body, large egg-shaped structure that provides fuel, manufactures chemicals, and maintains the entire neuron in working order. And dendrite, branch-like extension that arises from the cell body, receives signals from other neurons, muscles, and sense organs. Then pass these signals onto the cell body, okay? An axon is a single thread-like structure that carries signals away from the cell body to neighboring neurons, organs, and muscles. Then myelin sheath, okay, looks like separate tube-like segments composed of fatty material that wraps around and insulates an axon. And I'm going to talk about action potential too. But prevents interference from electrical signals generated in adjunct axons. So they control those movements, basically, okay? Then end bulbs or terminal bulbs located at extreme ends of the axon's branches. Then synapse comes in. It's a gap. And then miniature container that stores chemicals called neurotransmitters. That's more important for you to understand too. And the synapse, infinitely small space, 20 to 13 billionths of a meter, exists between the end bulb and its adjunct body organ, heart, muscles, or cell body. That's the gap between axons. That's synapse. So we have central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. Central nervous system meaning brain and spinal cord. And peripheral nervous system made up of nerves located throughout the body except in the brain and spinal cord. Okay? So nerves, string-like bundles of axons and dendrites that come from the spinal cord and are held together by connective tissue and carry information from the senses, skin, muscles, and the body's organs to and from the spinal cord. And those in the peripheral nervous system have the ability to grow or reattach if severed or damaged, okay? So like if you get injury, you can still recover because of that. Makes sense, right? Okay. Stimulus, okay? Skin has sensors that pick up mechanical pressure and transform it into electrical signal. Those signals are sent by the neuron's axon to various areas in the spinal cord and brain. Then brain interprets those electrical signals as pain, okay? So axon membrane has chemical gates that can open to allow electrically charged particles to enter or can close to keep out those particles. So ions or ions are chemical particles that have electrical changes. Then charges attract and like charges repel. That's action potential. It's like spike, okay? And then we have more positive ions kicking in. Then we are going back to the resting period. I think it's coming up. All right. Yeah, I see action. And then it's action potential. Did you see that picture? Isn't that funny? Okay. So as I told you, resting state, okay? Axon has a charge. Charge results from the axon membranes separating positive ions on the outside of negative ions on the inside, okay? Then sodium pump, transport process that picks up any sodium ions that enter the axon's chemical gates and returns them back outside, and result in keeping axon charged by keeping sodium ions outside the axon membrane. That's how they can balance the chemicals. Make sense to you? That's how it works. But that's biology, so don't worry. But I have to explain a little bit here so you understand the next step much better, which is more important for me, all right, to teach. So action potential. Tiny electrical current generated when positive sodium ions rush inside the axon. Enormous increase of sodium ions inside the axon causes the inside of the axon to reverse its charge. Inside becomes positive and outside becomes negative, all right? Like that, okay? Do you see the battery right there? That's like a charge, right? You charge the cell phone, right? The same thing, we charge those axons, okay, to be active, all right, to release some neurotransmitters, okay. I know you're a little bit puzzled here, but transmitters, okay, is a chemical messenger that transmits information between nerves and body organs such as muscles and heart. Excitatory transmitters open chemical locks and turn on neurons. Inhibitory is opposite. So if you have too much dopamine, we try to lock it, not to produce more, because that will help you to have less hallucinations and delusions. Make sense to you? And you will try to make it more. If you are depressed, you need more serotonin staying in your system. Make sense? That's what it means, guys, okay? Good. So neurotransmitters, dozens of different chemicals made by neurons and then used for communication between neurons during the performance of mental or physical activities, all right? Then, very important is coming up. Alcohol, okay? A psychoactive drug classified as a depressant, which means that it depresses the activity of the central nervous system. So when you take too much alcohol, what does happen to you? What does it happen to your body? Yes, lose the balance. How about the thought process? Brain, you can't really think clearly, right? And how about your emotions?
They can go like extreme.
Yeah, they can go extreme. They can lose their consciousness and also poor judgment, right? If you take too much alcohol, right? But if it's too little, maybe that will help you relax. But you know, everything should be in moderation. So that's just an example. Make sense to you? My point here is this chapter is how those like neurotransmitters affect our mind and body. That's the psychology part, not the biology part, right? Okay. Like, or memory too. If you take too much alcohol, what's going to happen? You don't remember, right? That thing, okay? Very good. So, what does alcohol do? Alcohol affects the brain by imitating a naturally occurring neurotransmitter, GABA. So what does GABA do? Okay. GABA neurons have chemical locks that can be opened by chemical keys in the form of the neurotransmitter GABA. GABA keys meaning alcohol molecules so closely resemble those of the GABA neurotransmitter that alcohol can function like GABA keys and open GABA receptors. When GABA neurons are excited, they decrease neural activity. That's when those, opposite effects happen, all right? Like poor judgment, poor memory, poor motor balance, so forth, okay? So, many people drink alcohol to feel less anxious and more relaxed. As I said, the moderation is the key. You can have a glass of wine to relax, that's fine. But appears to be a biological link between alcohol and anxiety. Okay, deficiency in a specific brain protein is associated with high anxiety and excessive alcohol use. So if we have people who are addicted with alcohol, that's how we should see the picture of that person with this addiction. Addiction is definitely a psychological problem, right? Okay, makes sense to you guys? All right. So number of well-known transmitters such as non-adrenaline, basically GABA, dopamine, serotonin. We have more, but those four are basically major ones. Okay. Endorphins, as you know, painkiller, right? Similar to morphine, decreases effects of pain during great bodily stress. Okay. Oh, of course. Then, I don't have to talk about this too much. Reflex, okay? Unlearned involuntary reaction to some stimulus. Neural connections underlying the reflex are pre-wired by genetic instructions. So for instance, babies, they have many involuntary reflex, okay? But it will wears off once they hit like 1 year old and so forth, 12 months, okay? That's related to the wiring with the chemicals too. All right, so reflex sequence, sensors triggers neurons. Sensors trigger neurons that start with withdrawal effect. So afferent neurons carry information from the senses to the spinal cord, okay? So interneuron, relatively short neuron foods, primary task is making connections between the neurons because we have 3 types of neurons: sensory neuron, motor neuron, and interneuron. So interneuron is the connection, okay? Efferent neuron carries information away from the spinal cord to produce responses in various muscles and organs throughout the body too, okay? Like that, going in and going out. So we sense the information to reach our brain, and then we reach out back to our muscles, right? Okay, that's motor neuron. Sensory neuron is intake. Motor neuron is reaching out, okay? So genes and evolution, okay? Genetic information, okay? We have brain-body development, brain-body developed according to complex chemical interactions written in a human cell no larger than a grain of sand. We have all those, which is developmental cycle. In fertilization, human life has its beginning when the father's sperm, which contains 23 chromosomes, penetrates the mother's egg, which contains 23 chromosomes. So it's 46, right? We have dominant and recessive genes. Dominant meaning if it's there, it appears. Like if you have brown eyes, that's dominant genes. And if you have blue eyes, gray eyes, that's recessive gene, meaning because it's secondary, but if it's paired, it appears. So for instance, my parents-in-law, my father-in-law has blue eyes, and my mother-in-law has brown eyes. My sister-in-laws, I have 4 sisters-in-law, okay? First one has, I think she has brown eyes. Second is my husband, okay? He has hazel color. Third one has blue. Fourth one has brown. The 5th one has hazel. So as you can see, 5 different kids, same genes, but different combinations. Make sense to you? So we have genetic factors, Fragile X, it's XX is what? For girls, XY is boys, right? That genes, okay? And we have some genetic, like baldness, color blindness is related to more males than females. It's because of the genetic components, okay? All right, so we have genetic mutations, okay? Accidental errors in genetic instructions that lead to a change. So generation to generation, genes, we try to keep the good genes alive, but then bad genes to go away, mutate, okay? And natural selection meaning genes for traits that help an organism survive and reproduce will be selected and will continue in a species, as I just told you. But genes for traits that prevent survival and reproduction won't be selected and will be eliminated in a species. Same thing with, humans too. So each generation is slightly different with genes, okay? Adaptations, common features of a species that provide it with improved function. So voluntary ideas such as adaptation, natural selection explain human behaviors and mental processes. We adapt to the environment to survive, right? Makes sense? Okay. Natural selection, that we tend to select the partners that we can carry our genes on, passing on, okay? And brain, you all know that we use magnetic one, you know, MRI, fMRI, like a brain activities, right? What part of the brain is more active when you're eating, when you're talking, and so forth. We have CAT scan, PET scan, and so forth too. It's just the way we observe how our brain works, okay? So it's more biological. It's like PET scan too, brain scans and cognitive neuroscience, okay? And also neuroimaging, we can see what brain part is related to what functions, all right? So we have divisions of the nervous system, okay? Major division, central nervous system, peripheral nervous system. You already know about that, okay? You can see the yellow ones, brain and spinal cord, that's central nervous system. The other red ones are peripheral nervous system, okay? It just have different functions, okay? So peripheral nervous system, okay? We have somatic nervous system, autonomic nervous system, sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, okay? Most important is autonomic nervous system. Sympathetic and parasympathetic, okay? Sympathetic is the one that when you're like running, digestion is not going to happen, and also your heart rate goes up, and then you sweat more, okay? That's sympathetic, okay, division. But parasympathetic is that after you stop running, you calm down, okay? The sweat, the skin will be dry, and then heart rate goes down, and then you might need to use the bathroom. It's just how it works, the body works. So it's more sympathetic, it's more active, okay? Parasympathetic is more reserving the, storing the energy. Make sense to you? That's how it works, okay? Then we have major parts of the brain, forebrain, midbrain, hindbrain, okay? Each part has different functions, okay? But these are more like how it is, okay? All right, so frontal lobe, okay? Involved with personality, emotions, and motor behaviors. Parietal lobe involved with perception, sensory information, or experiences. Occipital lobe involved with visual information or processing. Temporal lobe is, of course, hearing and speaking, okay? That's more important for you to learn, okay? Located in the front part of the brain, okay, includes huge area of cortex. It includes voluntary motor movements, interpreting and performing emotional behaviors, behaving normally in social situations, maintaining a healthy personality, paying attention to things in the environment, making decisions, and executing plans. Okay, that's the very important part of the brain, all right? Okay. All right. Oh, this is the case study. What happened was this guy was a worker at the railroad, and what happened was there was blasting the railroad to make the road, you know, the rails and happening and then stuff. What happened was when it happened, he got this sharp object going through his brain. He was alive, but his personality completely changed after it hit, because it hit the brain and damaged the brain. So his personality was like completely different person before and after. He was nice, quiet person. After was very grumpy, agitated person, okay? It's just a case study, okay? All right. Then frontal lobe functions, motor cortex. This one is right side, right hemisphere is controlling left side. And left is related to the right side. So if you have a stroke on the right, then left side might be paralyzed. And then the opposite too, okay? And right hemisphere is more into like spacious information. Left is a language center. I'll explain more to you too, okay? So, other important functions of peripheral lobe is sensory integration, spatial orientation, language abilities, visual, auditory attention, memory, and numerical processing, counting, okay? Then auditory cortex, of course, they senses the audio information, okay? And that one coming up is the auditory association too. It's speaking, and then noises, word or music. Like if you listen to the music, that's the part react about the lyrics and also the music itself, all right? All right, and Broca's area, okay? Located in the left frontal lobe, necessary for combining sounds into words and arranging words into meaningful sentences. So if it's damaged, aphasia can happen, meaning person cannot speak in fluent sentences but cannot understand what others are saying to him or her. Make sense to you? Wernicke's area is the opposite. That's Broca's area, okay? Wernicke's area is the opposite. Necessary for speaking in coherent sentences and for understanding speech. So if the Wernicke's area is damaged, it's called aphasia. Difficulty understanding spoken written words and difficulty putting words into meaningful sentences. Make sense to you? Okay, good. Some of you, yes, some of you, no, that's okay. You haven't read the chapter, that's okay. Okay, then, of course, occipital lobe is vision, okay? Lights, okay, images. Then we have structures such as hypothalamus, amygdala, thalamus, and hippocampus, okay? So hypothalamus regulates many motivational behaviors, including eating, drinking, and sexual responses, emotional behaviors, such as arousing the body when fighting or fleeing, so fight or flight, okay? Then, such as, and then secretion of hormones such as occurs at puberty. Amygdala, located in the tip of the temporal lobe. This one distinguishes the facial expressions, amygdala. So if it's damaged, you cannot be sensitive about people's facial expressions, all right? Thalamus gathers and processes information from the senses. So involved in receiving sensory information, doing some initial processing, and then relaying the sensory information to areas of other cortex, okay? Hippocampus, involved in saving many kinds of fleeting memories by putting them into permanent storage in various parts of the brain. But memory chapter I can explain more, okay? Like mouth is dry under sympathetic nervous system, but salivation for parasympathetic ones, okay? Palms, sweaty, dry. I already talked about heart rate is increasing during sympathetic stage, but then decreased at parasympathetic nervous system, right? It's opposite, all right? Homeostasis, it's like a biological clock, okay? And also, you have a, central AC system at home, for instance. You set the, room temp at 68. It's very comfortable temp. If it's hotter than 68, AC kicks in to keep it to 68. If it's lower than that, like 60, it's cold, so heat will come up and then keep it at 68. The same thing as homeostasis with your water balance, salt balance, and so forth. Make sense to you? All right, very good. And endocrine system, it's related to pituitary, pancreas, thyroid, and adrenal glands and gonads, okay? That's biological right there, okay? And then we have different gonads between two sexes, females and then males, different sex organs, okay? So that was module 4.